Welcome to the Cherish and Conquer podcast, the show dedicated to celebrating female entrepreneurs' strength, resilience, and innovation. Be inspired by stories of women and what they cherish to help them conquer against all odds. Every other week, you will learn from remarkable women on how they navigate challenges, uphold their values, and create sustainable success. And now, here's your host, Jim Rembach.
Hello and welcome to the Cherish and Conquer podcast. And so I have a question for you. Would you like to be a media darling so you can actually get the attention that you want? Well, you're going to get an opportunity to learn how to do that because we have Joanne McCall on the show with us today. Joanne, welcome.
Thank you, Jim. What a delight to be here.
I'm excited about our discussion. Now, Joanne has a lot of experience in helping other people to be able to get media coverage, all different kinds of people like Brian Tracy, Ken Blanchard, Dave Ramsey, Dr. Richard Bandler, and she's also the author of the book, Media Darling, Shine Through Every Interview. And before we get into the details on even her own entrepreneurial journey, Joanne, if you could, please share with the listeners and watchers how you're making an impact in the lives of the people who you are working with today.
What a great way to start this interview, because one of the joys of the work I do is I meet these fascinating people who are up to incredible things in the world. Mostly they have a business and usually have a book. They come to me, they have a book. And so I get to hear what they're up to, what they're doing, which is just delightful. And then I have the opportunity to help them to get their messaging out into the world in a really powerful, compelling way. And as we all know, there's a lot of information coming at us from every direction, every moment of the day. So being able to stand out in a way that's interesting and compelling and not fearful, because there's plenty of people going the fear route. It takes some expertise and some practice to get in a position where you can do that. So I am delighted to have that opportunity. I've been doing it for a number of years now, and it's so much fun. It's still fun. And who doesn't want to be in a job that they absolutely love and they're excited to get to every day? So I feel lucky.
Well, and one of the things that we had chatted a little bit is about the changes that have taken place in the past few years in regards to just say services and offerings and opportunities, to get media coverage that are just getting, people bombarded, with offers and pitches and, reach outs and contacts and connects from, quite frankly, all over the world. Because I even get them myself from people halfway around the world. The English is broken, all of these other, but I'm like, how do you know what to listen to and what to not listen to?
Well, what I can tell you is, do you mean from the perspective of the media person, such as you, if you're pitching that person, or as the client wanting to get the media? I assume the latter. How do you know to do that?
More of the latter.
Yeah. So, in this day and age, you can watch or listen to or read pretty much any media outlet. And so I always advise, make sure that you match what you're doing with the show you're going after. Make sure there's an alignment and a match there. The way to stand out is watch other interviews, watch what other people are doing. When you approach a podcaster, a journalist, or whoever, and they have a particular beat, they have an area that they work on every day, you have to find a way to approach them and talk about what you do that's going to capture their attention, which is actually your question. So I would say the number one thing is you need to be unique in some way. You need to be able to say something and describe it in a way that that person has not heard 1,000,000 times before, or 100 times before even. So spending time figuring out what that is, it will help you so much. And I have a quick story. I've also produced a podcast for a number of years. So I was getting pitched just this exact thing you're talking about. And a really common pitch was stories about going, difficult stories and how to survive and thrive. I heard that multiple times every week. Well, that's just not enough. If you say, well, this is a story about surviving and thriving, it's like, I have heard that so many times. So what is it that's unique in your particular story that might really capture someone's attention and their ears? That's what you're looking for, and that's what you want to hone in on. And you need to get to it fast. So have it in the subject line, have it in the first thing that you say, get to it fast. No warming up. Don't do a lot of, introduction of yourself. You want to capture their interest first. So that would be my suggestion for that.
Well, I mean, what I hear you saying is, trying to use certain things that are, mass blast,
Oh,
you can forget that.
that is so over. Yeah, that is so over. The only time that works is if you had breaking news and you were trying to notify everyone quickly, and that would be a media advisory. But usually you're not going to podcast for that anyway, if we're looking at podcasts. But yeah, doing a massive pitch to everybody does not work. In fact, it ticks people off and it will get you, they'll block you or whatever. And you don't want that either. So yes, it takes time to customize and make your pitch individualized. But so what? I mean, it increases your chances so much. So while some people might want to take a pitch and send it out to 2,000 media contacts that says the same thing, maybe the name gets changed. Focus in on 20 places where you really want to be, 20 people you really want to talk to, 20 places that have your audience, and figure out a way to approach them where they're going to say yes to you. And you will have much better success doing that, much better.
Okay, so I want to kind of go over a little bit the table of contents that is in Media Darling Shine Through Every Interview,
Okay.
and see if you can help us get a better understanding and context of this. And chapter 1 is, what is a media darling? So what is a media darling?
There are a lot of different ways to describe it, and I give a number of different words, but I would say the best description and the most succinct one is the results that it creates. And basically it is that media calls you. So you're likable, you know your material, you're credible, you give a great interview, you're easy to work with, you arrive on time. If you get bumped for some reason because something happened, you take that graciously. You provide them with anything that they need, whether it's pictures or they need, a summary of your book or your business, whatever it is, you supply them that, you respond quickly. These are all the elements of a media darling. All of us have worked with people that we loved working with, and we've all worked with people that we did not love working with. That it's like, oh no, this is just going to be too much work. They're not going to invite you back if you're too much work. That's really what it is. So it's almost like, that old, what was that old book, Everything I Need to Know I Learned in Kindergarten? It's being fun to play with, and it's being easy and a joy, and giving good information and telling great stories. So those are a number of things that make up being a media darling.
Myrina.ai draws inspiration from the legendary Amazonian Queen Marina, embodying resilience and strategic brilliance. With our AI-powered SaaS platform, we equip women-led businesses for success in the evolving landscape of AI and business automation. As a partner and community for female-led businesses, Myrina.ai maximizes their potential using AI while providing essential support. Ready to amplify your success using AI with like-minded ladies? Register or learn more at myrina.ai. And now, back to our interview.
You talk about the inner and outer games of media. What does that mean?
Well, the outer game is everything that we're used to discussing or talking about or thinking about. It's doing the interview, it's preparing for an interview, it's putting a pitch together, it's deciding who you're going to pitch, how you're going to pitch them. It's all that outer stuff. It's the things that you have to do to get what you want, to reach your goals. The inner game is what's going on in your head. And when I work with people, I have a lot of people who are very experienced at this, but I also have people who are fairly new to the process. And when that's the case, we need to do some inner game work. And that means facing any fears that you might have about being on camera. One of the biggest fears I hear from people is, I'm afraid I'll forget what I'm saying. I'm afraid I'll forget in the middle. Or what if they ask me a question I can't answer? Or what if they're confrontational? Or what if they say something, the list goes on and on and on. And when we do, say, mock interviews or mock media training, we practice these kinds of things. How do we answer the difficult questions? Then people get better. It's like when you were a little kid learning how to walk, you fell down a lot until you didn't. And so media training is great because you make your mistakes early on. And by the time you get on the air or get on a show, you're pretty good. So I'm a big proponent of practicing. And then when you go out, you're ready to go out.
And even when you say that, I start thinking about some things that I've heard, some things that I even share with some of the guests who may be on my podcast. One of the things when you start referring to, say messing up or not answering the question in the way that you wanted to answer a particular question, is it's totally human for that to occur.
Mm-hmm.
And I think people become more likable and more understandable when you actually do correct yourself, and there's nothing wrong with that.
I love that.
And so, because I will get people who will say a lot of time, well, if I mess up, will you edit it out? And I said, what if we take this approach? I said, if there is a situation where you mess up, you could say, hold on, let me think about that again. Or hold on, let me rephrase that. I said, because that dialogue and conversation makes you more human, which is definitely going to make people more, endearing, to you, and even have empathy towards you, and maybe even listen to you more, because you're not a automated, type of robot who is totally straight laced.
Right. I've had someone say, well, what if I forget? And, why not just say, oh, I forgot what I was saying. Can you repeat the question? I mean, if you take a light attitude, a lot of people will laugh right along with you. If you freak out, then other people feel uncomfortable. That's what creates that kind of awkwardness. So to your point, I absolutely agree. Absolutely.
Okay, so you also talk about, and you kind of hit on this a little bit, but maybe you can put it into a little bit more of a defined kind of like a workflow, and that is getting noticed in an incredibly noisy world. How do you get noticed in an incredibly noisy world as of today?
The first thing is you need to be really clear on what it is you're about and what it is your business is about, or what it is, how you serve people. You need to be very, very clear on what it is and then who you're serving. That's the first thing. Very basic, but important, and not everybody does that. So you want to get really clear on what that is. And then there are several buckets of media. The first one is what I call you media. There are other terms that some people use, but you media is the content generation that you do. So it would be your website, it's your social media channels, it's a podcast if you create a podcast, it's a blog if you have a blog. This is what you create. And so through that, you can use your search words, your keywords, you can write your content and make sure you include things that when someone does a search for you, that you'll come up. So you're kind of doing all that kind of work. You're also establishing what you're about, what your values are about, not only your business side, but part of your personal side as well, as because this is all kind of melded together. Really, the business and the personal has come together quite a bit. So these are the first things that you want to set up before you go after any what's called earned media. So earned media is when you approach another media person, you pitch them to be in their publication, their online, whatever, their show, their podcast, whatever it is. It's earned media, which means you're going to be jumping through some hoops. So you need to be credible. You want to present yourself and present your pitch in such a way that's unique, it's credible, it shows that you'd be a great guest. I would include links to other interviews you've done. This has become really a critical thing now. So when I'm going out with my clients, I always have something in there. If you haven't done anything yet, which is possible, then you want to get on and do some of your own video taping and upload it onto a YouTube channel or onto your website, but put it somewhere so that they can click a link, they can see how you present yourself, how you come across, because nobody has to take a chance anymore. So you want to go ahead and do that. This helps you to get yourself in place. And that way, when you go out and you do pitch other media, they can, again, take a look at what you're doing. They can look at your social sites. They can look at your website. And they often do long before they get back in touch with you. So this is kind of the reality of it.
As you're talking, I start thinking, and then I had mentioned this to you before. I've been podcasting for over 10 years. And I jokingly say, well, I had the equipment 3 years prior. It just took me a little while to get started. Because I didn't want to mess up like you were talking about. And a lot of people will, give the advice of just get going, you'll get better.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, but I had a certain bar that I wanted to meet,
Yeah.
before I even started going. So that's my own, as you'd say, pain in trying to find perfection. But when I start thinking about literally thousands of pitches over the past 10 years that I have received for people to be on my podcasts, I've seen all kinds of different quality of pitch, all from all over the world. And as you're saying, I'm starting to think, what did attract me? Well, it definitely wasn't things that were just loaded with a bunch of text and a bunch about the author or the speaker or the business owner. I mean, that's not what did it. It was, something that caused me to notice quickly before I even, went even further to find out a little bit more. And then for me, if it's not a fit, it's kind of like you make a quick decision, and I just reply pass. Some of them I don't even respond to because they're just, quite frankly, awful.
Mhm.
And so when we start talking about that, just say copywriting of you, I also find one thing that's quite interesting, and I dare to say we all have this blind spot,
Hmm.
is we don't know how to talk about some of the things that you're referring to when we're doing it and analyzing ourselves.
Yeah.
And so, interestingly, a lot of people will ask people that they already know who know them.
Oh.
It's like, well, they're not good sources
No.
either.
No, we love you. It's great. Send it out.
Exactly.
Mhm.
So when you start talking about that reflection and that assessment and that, building of, who you are and all that stuff, what are some of the things that you have seen that allowed people to be most successful in doing that?
Well, to your point, you're exactly right. Having friends, good friends and family look over what you're doing. I mean, it's nice to do that, of course, but they're probably not the best people to really give you solid feedback because it can, how do I say this? Sometimes, depending on the person, it can bite a little bit when someone tells you, oh, forgive these earbuds. I mean, I need a new pair. I need a new pair. So my apologies. However, let's see, there are all kinds of groups now you can get involved in. I mean, groups are so easy now and they're everywhere, where there are people who maybe are working in the arena of helping you to look good on camera or whatever it is you're looking for, to look good, on your website, to present yourself well. Look for them. Pay attention to what they're saying. You can pick up a lot of cues. I encourage people to watch other interviews because you can learn a lot just from watching other interviews and how people interact, how they present themselves, how they maybe shouldn't present themselves, because sometimes that'll come across. So getting the right kind of feedback and discerning who will give that to you is really key, because you need information that's really going to help you. Just an example, when it comes to social media, and I listen to some of these experts say, well, you need to be everywhere. You have to be everywhere. I don't personally agree with that. But some say you need to be everywhere. And I think if you're like Pepsi Cola and you're some of these major brands, then you do. One guy was saying you should tweet every single hour, do 24 tweets and line them up. So once an hour that tweets out. And I go, who has the time to do all of this, right? So, my own advice is pick two, go deep, and be where you want to be. So where do you like to be? I mean, that makes a big difference as well. So that's just an example of where you can get information that isn't necessarily for you. So when someone says you should be everywhere, that isn't necessarily for you. So discernment is really key. And how do you know? Part of it is just kind of getting to know people, reading them, listening to them, and talking to other people. If it's very easy now to meet someone who you might look up to, who's kind of a a peer. I like to call them niche mates. They kind of share your space, but maybe they're farther along the path than you are. Sometimes you can strike up a friendship and just ask a few questions, and they're happy to give you some information. So we live in a world of the plus side is it's pretty easy to reach out to people. Now we just need to reach out to the right people and in the right way. So this is really a big piece of what we're talking about today.
Well, I mean, to me, that's why, being in community of others is what I tell others is that really it's how the human race survived.
Mm.
I mean, we weren't solo out there because we would be eaten.
Mm-hmm.
That's not the way it works. And even more so today, if you're making all of these decisions and doing all of this work in isolation, you're going to get eaten.
Yeah. Yes.
So if I look at you doing what you do for the amount of years of experience that you've had, with it, I would love to know, what inspired you to start your own business, and how does it align with the concept of cherish and conquer?
First of all, I love the title of your podcast, because the first
Thank
thing
you.
I thought, well, there's divide and conquer. That's a whole different thing. That's that whole, art of war, isn't it? I mean, the whole military thing, divide and conquer. And yours is cherish and conquer, which I think is fabulous, because it's really it's how the human race needs to go now. This is kind of what needs to happen. So for myself, I started in radio broadcasting. I was in radio for a number of years, had my own talk show, and I loved it, and I learned a lot from it. And then I reached a point where I needed more. I needed more control of my own destiny. I didn't want to be told what to do all the time, even though I had a fair amount of freedom on the air. I didn't want to be told, where I had to be, what I had to do, and especially, for the most part, I worked with really great people. But a time or two, I had someone that, I didn't really respect, and I had different opinions about where things needed to go and what needed to happen. And so I thought, well, one way to go is you can work with someone like that and try to change it and try to change the system. And a lot of people in like corporate America, you have to do that. It's slow, but you work at it. But I just don't have that kind of patience. I mean, I think that's really what it is. It's like, I'm not waiting 10 years to make this happen. So I had been interviewing lots of authors, mostly business people and authors, and I was being pitched by publicists far and wide. And I remember I would listen to them, Jim, and I'd say, that person was pretty good. If I was a publicist, I would do this and this and this. That was really good. And then someone else, I go, oh man, no, I would never do that. As a publicist, I would never do that. That was a bad idea. That's like when someone would call me every day and leave 2-minute voicemail messages. And then I'd think, this is going back a little ways, of course. And I'd think, okay, not only am I not going to have your guest on, but I never want to work with you again. See, I mean, you don't want that happening, right? So anyway, I thought, well, I can do that. And one day I pulled the plug and I thought, I'm going to do this. And I knew a woman who was launching a book, and it was through Simon & Schuster. And I was talking with her about it. I said, I'd like to work with you on this. And so, she took a chance. And I never looked back. So some people say you should have a year's worth of income, for all your expenses before you go out on your own. But that's great. It's probably very wise advice, and it's probably something everyone should do. I did not, but I was in the black the first month. So, it worked out pretty good.
It absolutely did.
Yeah.
So, and that's just yet another one of those things that you were talking about in regards to the advice of, like I was even talking about my own podcast, just get started, and I couldn't do it. I had to build up, the frameworks and the process, and I had to practice, and, doing an interview with yourself to get better is kind of tough sometimes. But, I reached out to the people who were part of my network. I started, getting them as, guests on my podcast. And, that was more than a decade ago. And it's just, continue to grow from there.
And look at you
I
now.
feel very fortunate.
Look at you now. You're just doing great things. You've been around a while. You're doing great things. That's just amazing. Well, not amazing. I mean, it's great.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that
Absolutely.
greatly. So can you share a story where embracing female qualities or strengths help you to overcome a challenge in your business?
At the core of Myrina.ai is customization and the innovative AI you process, which uses AI to infuse your personality, style, and vision into cloning you and growing your business. Are you ready to amplify your success using AI with a community of fellow female entrepreneurs? Go to Myrina.ai today. And now, back to the interview.
Oh my gosh. Yes. There are challenges all the time. I mean, every day, some are bigger than others. And I would say, patience is a big one, because business goes in cycles. And initially, when I went through this, I didn't know it. It took a little while to figure it out. So there's sometimes when things are going really well and you think, wow, this is just fantastic. This is really going. And it is. That's wonderful. Enjoy it. Because there sometimes are things out of your control, the economy, or various things can happen. And then the cycle may change to something that's more difficult. And maybe you're having to change some of your services, and maybe you're having to adjust. And what I found is that this has happened enough times where there's a certain amount of faith now. It's and I don't mean religious faith. I just mean faith that it's going to work out. And so now when those really difficult challenges come, there's a knowing that, while I may not know exactly what I'm going to do yet, I know that we will get there. And so I guess I would want to put out that patience is a big one. Just being patient and continuing to move forward, one foot in front of the other. You try things. If you need to change something, change it. If you need to, let someone go. Unfortunately, sometimes that has to happen for whatever reason. Difficult choices sometimes need to be made, but you just keep moving forward. And so it's patience and kind of a calm knowing rather than being too reactive to things. And so that there's probably more to it. I'd love to know what your thought is about that, but those are two qualities that I see are huge. Yeah.
I mean, for me, I would dare to say time. And this is where the wisdom kind of comes into play.
Mm-hmm.
Recognizing and getting a better understanding of things that you can influence and can't control.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there is for me at least, some spiritual faith in that as well. I think I believe in Jesus Christ, and he's my savior, and he'll save me at some point. And sometimes he's knocking on the door and talking in my ear, and sometimes I don't listen. The age thing and the wisdom and seeing those patterns and the cycles. And the thing is, I try to talk to my kids about those things, and of course it's just dad talking at that point. But there's a lot of truth to that, and it goes back for me to what you said in regards to that whole mentoring type of seeking and being open to other perspectives and ideas. It's crucial. Many years ago, I was introduced to the acronym VUCA. And VUCA stands for volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. And it actually, you talked about war. It was actually a strategic concept that was developed in the 80s in the military. Thinking about what is war? It's volatile, it's uncertain, it's complex, and it's very ambiguous. And how do we move forward, in that chaotic world? And to me, that's today.
Mm-hmm.
It's every single day.
Mm-hmm.
So how do I really focus in on what I can control, and the things that I can't? I just need to leave those to God's hands. I have told other people that I'm actually a baseball pitching coach, and I coach at the high school level, and I even coach a college summer league. And I found myself dealing more with that aspect, the mental aspect of success, more so than I did skill acquisition or conditioning.
Interesting.
Because you can have the skills, you could be conditioned and practiced, but if you don't have a good understanding of your mental skills and abilities, whether we talk about emotional intelligence or whether we talk about self-love, I mean, all these types of things, you will fail.
The inner game. I agree. Absolutely.
So when you start talking about mental resilience, how do you find that?
Part of it is time, which you mentioned, time and wisdom, having gone through it. That said, I still encounter new things all the time. I love this story. Remember when you were a kid and you were in class in school and the teacher said, we're going to play a new game today and I need a volunteer. Your kids. Yes. Oh, me, pick me. But somewhere along the line, we lose that, right? Middle school, high school, I don't know, but certainly as adults. And we want to do something and be good at it right away, so that we can show people we're already good at it. I mean, we lose that element of newness. Every day is new, and I think that can be part of the inner game, and should be, of newness and trying something new. And who cares if you fail? I mean, we're all, we fail, but we learn. You learn from failure. That's part of it, and you'll be better the next time. So I think kind of mentally having that kind of resilience, that, if you really feel secure in who you are, and you speak of spirituality and such, which I happen to share that with you, it can get you, through pretty much anything, right?
Very much so.
Mhm.
Okay, can you share a moment when your passion for your business fueled your perseverance through tough times?
Yeah, probably have several of those. Well, I had I had a time when my sister passed away. She came down with a very rare illness that was misdiagnosed for 2 years. So by the time they diagnosed it, it was too late. It was completely shattering to me and my life. And I learned so much through that. One thing was, after I processed some of the grief anyway, and was really able to kind of come out of that again, I realized that she had a business, and it was really just kind of getting started, and I wasn't able to help her with that. But I thought, well, I can't help her now, but I can help others. And so that fuels me. I got to say, it fuels me every day, that when people want to get their business going, or they need help taking it to the next level, I feel I feel a real passion for that, and a real interest in that. So that was definitely a tough time to get through. And I didn't know how I would, to tell you the truth. But and things do happen in life. Absolutely, the rug kind of gets pulled out from under you, and that's when you need to kind of call on those inner resources, whatever they are that you have, and other people too, who may be able to help you kind of get through things. Your business, it goes through cycles. It just will. So if we get too excited, oh, everything's going to go great, 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 then we get really surprised when it doesn't. And, there will be cycles. It's just how it works.
So stay the course, and don't allow the ride to get too wild, right?
Right. And I'm sure some people might quit and try something else, and maybe that is the thing to do. I never entertained that. I just wanted to keep going, because it's always interesting. So,
Well, I think you hit on an important point, is, how do I go about assessing whether or not I do need to pivot and take a different course with where I'm going. And you kind of hit this a moment ago, and I'd like you to elaborate on this a little bit. Is you mentioned something about listening to your audience, paying attention to the publicist and the podcaster and what they are actually doing. And so to me, there's a lot of external focus and awareness that has taken place. So how do you go about helping people to get better at that?
And listening to what others are doing.
Yes.
Well, it's interesting. I sometimes it's just a conversation, and we'll kind of go through things together. Some people are open to it, and they know that they need to explore and do what's being suggested. And some people do that, which is wise, I think. And then other people, there's resistance to that. So it kind of, and that also to some degree tells me if I'm going to work with someone or not. Is there needs to be a trust, and I've done this a while, and that trust is important. So that's an important element that has to be there. So if someone's really resistant to this, and it's only happened a few times in my career, then there's probably someone better for them. So yeah.
So can you share an example of a time when staying true to your principles led to a significant achievement or breakthrough in your business?
Yeah. Early on, early on, Jim, I was, this is very, in the first couple of years, I was approached by a gentleman to represent him in his book. And there was my internal whatever said, no, don't do it. But I had this voice in my head that said, oh, you shouldn't say no to that. It might have been my mother. I don't know. It was just, you shouldn't say no to that. It's business. You're just really getting started. You should say yes to this. You should say yes to this. But there was something in me going, no, I don't think so. Yes, you should do this. So I did it. And the second I said yes, I knew it was the wrong thing to do. The second. So it was only a 3-month contract. And so I worked my way through it, of course, because I had said yes, there was a commitment. I think I did a pretty good job. But I knew that not only did I know that that was going to end at 3 months, but I also knew I was never going to do that again. Period. And I didn't. So if something tells me, and I can, it's right. It's right. This kind of feeling, intuition is right. So I listen to it now. And I'll be very nice. I mean, I'll always be very nice, but I won't do that. Here's a second lesson I got. The first year I was in business, I had to sell my car to pay my taxes. I never did that again either. So, I didn't put enough money aside. I didn't pay my quarterlies as much as I should have, that was a big lesson. Okay. I never let that happen again either. So, I'm a quick learner. Sometimes I have to fall pretty hard, but I will learn. And I suggest that's a good thing.
Well, yeah. Being a quick learner is, and what you mentioned is, something that a lot of people fall into the trap of. They don't take into consideration that whole tax component in the financial planning piece when you start talking about running a business. Because you previously you had mentioned something about, I think a client, or you talked about or reference somebody who's like, an accountant, and in that particular space. And not everybody is that. And then even when you say accountant, well, there's all kinds of different accountants. Are they a tax, accountant?
Mm-hmm.
And taxes will never go away.
No, that's correct.
Okay. How do you actually maintain a healthy work-life balance as a woman in business, and what strategies have worked well for you?
So, yeah, a couple of things. One thing I love about, because, with my work, I have people that will sometimes go on a media tour. They're going somewhere and it's going to be over the weekend or it's going to be over a holiday. I've got someone now, he's doing a coast to coast bike ride from Oregon to Yorktown, Virginia, and we're contacting media all along the route. So weekends are not off. But, I have family and such. So the beauty is I don't have to be at my desk the whole time. I just have to make sure that if that important call comes from someone like yourself who has a deadline and they need to talk to so-and-so, I'm there and able to take it. And then I can move back to having dinner or doing, whatever. I understand a lot of people don't have necessarily that sort of business. But the point I'm trying to make is, with the convenience of online cell phones, texts, and such, you can handle something pretty quickly, and it doesn't have to take you completely away from your time off. And yet it moves things forward. So I kind of love it for that reason. That said, when I don't have someone on the road, and that isn't happening, when I leave for the day on Friday, I work from my home. I have a separate office area. I shut the door. And then another big mantra I have is when I work, I'm working. I'm not thinking about the weekend. I'm not thinking about the upcoming vacation. I'm working. I'm getting someone on your show, or I'm doing whatever it is I'm doing. And then when I have time off, I'm not working. So when I work, I work. When I'm playing, I'm playing. And I'm not scrolling social media to see, what's the trend, what's going on. And if you can, it's a mind thing. It's that whole inner game. It's being focused on where you need to be and what you should be doing right now, and letting other things go. And this is something I find a lot of people have trouble with, is being able to let things go when it's time to let them go. Like if you have a little argument with someone and resolving it and letting it go. You don't hang on to it for a week. Bad idea.
Talking about the years of wisdom, I think one of the things that I don't always follow, but I've tried to do a better job of, is knowing when to not say anything at all.
Beautiful.
I think that's how 30 years of plus marriage
Yes.
has actually happened.
Oh, yes.
And of course, she won't say that. But,
But I know the situation. It's like you're with someone. I think this thought comes like, oh, I could say this. Better not to.
better be silent. Okay. So now it's time for our rapid pace round, and that's our breakthrough blitz. Joanne McCall, are you ready to help us break through?
I'm ready.
All right. So what's your favorite productivity tool or app?
I guess I have to be fast, right? I'm not being fast enough, probably. Well, I use mind maps. I'm a big mind mapper. Yep.
What's your favorite way to unwind after a busy day?
I like to take a walk. Sometimes I run, but I definitely like to take a walk out in nature. Mm-hmm.
If you could have dinner with any female business leader, living or deceased, who would it be?
Oh, this is such a great question. There's like 50 different people I could think of. Let's see, who would I most love to? Well, the first one that comes to mind is, and I'm not going to say that. All right, I'll say it. The woman who started Spanx. I just think she's just phenomenal. I know her husband, Jesse, and I just think she's amazing. I'd love to sit down and talk to her. But that said, there are lots of people I would love to talk to.
Sure. What's your favorite quote or mantra that keeps you motivated?
Do no harm, but take no blank.
And what is one piece of advice you'd give to aspiring female entrepreneurs?
You can do it, and you must, because there are other women watching you who need you. And there's something that you can give to the world that no one else can. And it's time for you to do it.
Okay, this is my last breakthrough blitz question, Joanne. What's the biggest misconception that people have about being a female entrepreneur, and how do you address it in your own business?
I would say sometimes there's a tendency to think that you might be a pushover. And not by everybody, just now and then you might run into it. And, I just find that funny. and you can stand your ground and be very nice about it. Standing your ground doesn't mean you have to be all, belligerent and noisy. You can stand your ground very nicely, but make it really clear. So.
And sometimes that's being silent, right?
Silence is golden.
Joanne McCall, I've had a fun time chatting with you today. How do listeners and watchers get in touch with you?
Thank you, Jim. You can contact me through the contact page on my website. My email is joanne@joannemccall.com. Pretty easy. Please do. I'd love to hear what you're up to. I'm also Joanne McCall on all the social channels. Not all of them, just quite a number of them. And what a delight to be here with you, Jim. It's so nice to spend time. I've been booking people on your show for years, and how great to be a guest. So thank you.
Oh, it's been an honor to have you. Joanne McCall, thank you for sharing your knowledge and wisdom, and we wish you the very best.
Thanks for tuning into the Cherish and Conquer podcast from Marina. Join our community of trailblazing women at community.marina.ai and get access to exclusive resources, checklists, and guides. If you found value in today's episode, please rate, review, subscribe, and share it across your social platforms. See you soon, and remember, barriers are for breaking.